Hi, everybody. My name's Jon Myer, and today's topic is healthcare interoperability, B2B SaaS application with FHIR Data Lake. Our guest today is Pascal Odek, CTO and co-founder of WellBeam. You know, Pascal is an entrepreneur, software engineer with a passion for solving problems in healthcare, with a focus for continuum of care in the post-acute space. You know, his interest in healthcare interoperability landscape developments with HL7 FHIR. All right, please join me and welcome Pascal to the show. Pascal, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, John.
Pascal, I've got a couple of questions for you, but I want to understand your background a little bit and where you come from and why WellBeam.
Thank you, John. I actually grew up in Kenya and came to the US for college in California, after which I joined GoFundMe as a software engineer. And my goal was really to be a doctor, but coming to the US, realizing I needed to do postgraduate school to become a doctor, I switched to software engineering. But healthcare still remained at the core. So my passion was to develop a company that helped patients recover faster.
I think it's pretty cool you were a developer for GoFundMe. And I have to go look at that. Is your code still there?
Yes, my code is still there. I didn't leave too long ago. Hopefully, they haven't deleted it, but I think it was good enough.
Well, thank you so much. So, Pascal, let's talk about WellBeam. What is WellBeam and why?
Yeah, certainly. So, WellBeam is a company that helps enable seamless communication between healthcare providers within a health system, hospitals, and the post-acute care space. So, think about home health, home infusion, or basically a nurse who can come to your home, help take care of your wounds, or a physical therapist coming to your home, help you regain full range of physical motion. Any care that's not needed within the health system is always referred to your home setting, and nurses come and take care of that. We help bridge that communication gap that exists today. If a order is required for your medication, it has to go through fax. If there's complications with your wound, the nurses don't have an easy way of reaching the provider. So WellBeam is that platform that connects the doctors in the hospital to act fast compared to what exists today, to make sure that you get better even while you are at home.
So, WellBeam is the healthcare communication or translation between provider and the actual people doing the services, or how does that work?
Certainly. So, two big things. One is that if you get discharged from the hospital today, your doctor who discharges you still needs to follow your care at home. And that includes them signing off on any medication that you need to receive, or even just the plan of care that a home health agency might have for you. So that's the first part of it. The second part is sometimes complications happen after a patient is back home. A wound from surgery can get infected. The progress with physical therapy may not be what was planned, or the patient might get worse. Today, it's really hard for the doctors to hear about what's going on there, and WellBeam helps the nurses keep the doctors up to date on their patients' conditions.
Nice. Well, today we're talking about AWS Health Lake and Fire. And before we get to that, I think we have to understand WellBeam's architecture as it was before the integration and the help by IBEX Labs with Fire. So, Pascal, what did WellBeam's architecture look like before?
Certainly, John. So, based on my previous experience through college, what I learned, and working as a full stack software engineer at GoFundMe, the experience I had was building platforms based on REST APIs, JSON based, as well as building the storage layer on relational databases. We used MySQL before switching things to Fire. So we chose this primarily because we already had experience, and it would be easier to get other engineers to join our project and build right from day one.
So, Pascal, help me understand, what is Fire?
FHIR is a new language for storing healthcare data. And this was a project that started in 2012. There were a lot of healthcare companies coming up at that point, and there was a strong push within the healthcare industry for patients' data to be shared between hospitals, between different phases of care, so acute, post acute, and any other. And the standards that existed were a little bit outdated and fragmented. So FHIR was developed because one, it used a more modern architecture. It is REST based, which is what a lot of the internet is built on. And a lot of developers already know this sort of language. So it would be easy to get new players like us to get in and fill in the gaps within healthcare IT.
Okay, what about AWS Health Lake?
Yeah, so it about 9 years after FHIR started being developed, AWS announced that they have AWS Health Lake, and this was a FHIR-based data lake. Sure, development of it happened a few years before, but in 2021 it became public or generally available. And for us, having been within AWS originally, we were excited about this new availability, and our goal was to be able to get our data converted from the MySQL database into this Health Lake.
So utilizing AWS Health Lake, the underlying the communication is the format of FHIR, and your WellBeam architecture communicated had a different format. And why can't you just convert it to FHIR or redo everything to FHIR, and then you would be done with it? You didn't have to do any translation.
Yeah, we were already live at this point, stopping all our operations. We have customers who have high requirements for availability. We basically can't turn this thing off and then turn it back on after a couple months. So we took two approaches to it, which was one, we would use our internal team, get the engineers trained on FHIR, have them architect a data pipeline, and get the migration to happen from the MySQL database. This is a huge undertaking. The second option we had was to use a company who has done this over and over before within AWS, is actually recognized by AWS Partner Network as one of the amazing people who can do it. And we went with the second option, which was looking for a vendor who could help us do this much faster than we could.
All right, before we actually get to the vendor that's doing it, building it in-house. Isn't there a certain value of having it in-house, right? You've kind of built your own platform, your developers understand it and work on it, but isn't there a lot of cost to it or the time and effort to implement it while you have other focus? I think sometimes it might be beneficial to build it in-house versus going outside, but I think one of the things with FHIR is that you have to understand and rewrite everything to it. You have to educate your developers on the technology, on the conversion and the translation.
You hit really good points there, John. So I would love for my team to go to build everything in house. The reality is, like you said, for new technologies like FHIR, it takes a while to get up to speed on it. And don't get me wrong, I still want our engineering team to be able to get up to speed on it and know what's going on there. We have a lot of other items in our product roadmap, and those are not things I wanted to pause on. And working with a vendor who knows FHIR already would, one, make sure we have things going in parallel, but to make sure we get it done really well.
So the priorities of some of your projects, you had more pressing ones than actually rebuilding or building it and getting up to speed on it. You decided to go with a well-known vendor or partner in order to get this done. How did you approach that?
Yeah, certainly. So the first step we took was going through our architecture, knowing where we are today, and then comparing that to where we need to be, which is being FHIR capable. We identified a scope of work that was needed to be done. So the first part was mapping our existing database into FHIR resources. That was one of the initial needs that we had, and it was going to be big. It needed someone who really knew FHIR well. The second need we had was for this to be within AWS. We had our infrastructure there already, and we would want to keep it that way. We also needed this process to be automated. We didn't want someone sitting on a computer pressing a button to convert every single data into FHIR. And the way this was built, we had a requirement for it to be easily repeatable. Basically, this is what's called infrastructure as a service. So the whole architecture they built would need to be able to be transferred from one environment to the other. And last but not least, it needed to fit within our budget. So the cost of developing this new architecture, as well as the cost of having it running, needed to be done in a way that we could afford. That's the scope of work we had. But yeah, back to you, John.
So you identified a number of cases, a number of things for the scope of work. Budget was one of them. That's always a constraint at the top of the list. You needed a vendor who had the experience and the knowledge in healthcare and competencies. Also, dealing with AWS, how did you actually identify the partner to help you with the scope of work?
Yeah, the account manager we had within AWS was really knowledgeable, and had worked with other AWS partner network members. So, working closely with them after telling them what our needs were, we came up with a short list of four vendors. And out of all those four, we chose Ibex Labs.
All right. So why Ibex Labs? I mean, out of the four, Ibex Labs stood out to you, correct?
Yeah, Ibex Lab stood out. One of the biggest things we loved was that they are part of the healthcare competency certification from AWS. We are in healthcare. There's a lot of needs to operate within the healthcare IT industry. There's compliance and there's these new language models that you need to be aware of. So that in itself was big. They are also part of the AWS transfer family. And after reviewing their customer case reviews, we were happy with what they'd done with other customers before us. And that gave us really a big amount of trust that they were able to deliver what we wanted.
Pascal, the customer case studies, how valuable are they to you and WellBeam on deciding Ibex Labs?
Yeah, I mean, we like to take people's word, but also have them prove that what they say was actually done. So they referred us to some of the companies they had worked with before, and really hearing how that went, the process they took. And they've done really complex projects before with healthcare companies. So hearing this from their actual previous customers was a really big deal for us. That meant we could trust them.
Some of the other things that you identified for Ibex Labs is even before signing on with them, was there any type of programs that they were able to come up with or find valuable to you to help you with this process and the scope of work?
Yes, that was a big deal for us. Ibex Labs told us about the AWS Jumpstart program. And when I say it's huge, it's huge. There's 50% cost coverage that we were able to get. And for a company our size, we don't have the flexibility of spending money anyhow. And this was an important project for us. We were ready to get it ongoing, but the added benefit that 50% of it would be covered was like Christmas come early for us.
That's pretty good. So, wait a second. You identified Ibex Labs through the scope of work. You had two types of outcomes you could do for this. You could either build it in house or go with a partner. And the cost savings, the budget, and the experience of going with Ibex Labs. Oh, by the way, 50% covered for this project, which means that you could get more done, do more with Ibex Labs, and the ongoing partnership with AWS was huge.
Absolutely. That's one of the things we've really loved about working with AWS and with their partner network through programs like this. A huge win for us for sure.
I think a lot of the AWS partner programs that are out there aren't known to many, but you have to find the right partner who knows about these programs to help everybody out. The ones who truly care and that are customer obsessed are the partners and AWS in order to help you complete these tasks at hand. Pascal, help me understand, what was your relationship or experience working with IBEX Labs throughout this entire scope of work?
I would say it was amazing, and that's an understatement. One of the first things that happened after we signed on with them was they wanted to come in where we operate, and that's Slack. A lot of tech companies do that. And being able to set up a shared channel with them enabled us to communicate much more seamlessly. So having that channel of being able to talk to the engineers directly, their product managers directly, as well as setting up a weekly stand-up check-in with them, where we checked on progress and any blockers that was being experienced by the developers, in addition to any ad hoc meetings that were necessary. So random days they'd come to us and tell us, hey, this and this went really well, we're happy to move on, we're ahead of schedule, or we hit a blocker here and we'd love your insights, or have your team jump on a call with us to help solve that. So all of that facilitation and being available was really helpful. We also learned that they really know the AWS ecosystem really well. It wasn't really a surprise, but it was just pleasant to see it in action.
I think understanding the AWS ecosystem and how to navigate it is usually one of those hidden benefits for a lot of partners and companies because they can identify those programs. Were there any challenges that WellBeam and IBEX ran into along the way, and how did you overcome them?
Certainly. I recall one of the bigger challenges we faced was, so the pipeline they built was supposed to run on a batch process, and sometimes not everything works well. And IBEX was able to flag it to us that in case one of the conversions failed, that's converting our data from our relational database into FHIR resources. If anything failed, there was really no way of us knowing that it failed and going back to redo it. So they reached out to us and we set up a meeting where they shared their proposed solution, which was for us to add flags within our master database to show that a particular raw item had not exported successfully into FHIR. So they worked really closely with our engineering team to put this in place. And even today, after production, we can confirm that sometimes hiccups are hit, but the process is able to identify them and fix them right away. So it was a challenge, but they helped us overcome it, and we can see the fruits of that today.
Pascal, before I dive into the challenge and overcoming those error constraints, everybody, we're talking with Pascal Odek, the CTO and co-founder of WellBeam. And our topic today is healthcare interoperability, B2B SaaS application with FHIR Data Lake. Now, WellBeam is working directly with IBEX Labs as in a partnership. IBEX Labs is building them that connection for FHIR to translate the data to and from. And yes, WellBeam can receive that data in the FHIR format, but they also can send in the FHIR format to AWS Health Lake. Now, Pascal, we're talking about one of the challenges and error conversions that happens. Walk me through this. Error happens, it gets flagged. Are those individual ones that have to be evaluated? How are they handled throughout the entire process?
Certainly, John. So whenever an error happens, the first line of correction is an automated retry. And that's because maybe it was a network issue or something that just needed a retry to make it happen. If that fails and it's flagged for a second time, then we'll have an engineer hop in there to look, hey, what's really causing this to fail? And these are all steps that IBEX helped us put in place.
So IBEX put in some of the place to automatically retry the error, so you didn't have to have a human interaction throughout the process. But then after the retry failed, what is it, like once or like twice? Then you have a human interaction to evaluate the error.
Yes. So I don't know the correct number, but twice, thrice. If it still fails, then we have an engineer jumping in to see what's causing these issues.
Okay, can you walk me through from the time of identifying this challenge that came up with the error conversion to the time of complete or resolution to it? How long did it take IBEX to come up with a solution and implement it?
This was really fast, I'd say within a week or less. Like I said, they set up a cadence of meetings, which was once a week, and we kept it also open to them. If there was any problem that came up, we were happy to jump on a call. And for this particular case, they came on the call very ready for it. One of the things we don't like is meetings that people are not prepared for. So they came there, they were able to identify the problem. In addition to that, propose different solutions to it. And one of the ones they proposed is what we end up going with. So in a span of less than a week, there was a way forward, and the engineers were back to getting this off the ground.
Nice. Pascal, and going off the timing of things, I want to know from the time that you engaged with IBEX to the implementation of FHIR and working directly with them, how long did this project take?
This project took between 2 to 3 months, and that's beginning to end. It actually took a shorter time than we thought it would take. And I attribute that to the availability of IBEX labs to make sure any blockers are cleared right away, and also sharing progress on a very frequent basis. The project management and the team there under Arun was really amazing to help get this off the ground sooner than we had actually planned.
Pascal, what was the outcome now that this is implemented? How is it helping WellBeam? How is it helping the customers, or how is it helping potential people integrate with your system?
Yeah, we're excited. I think as of a month or a few weeks ago, we are live with this in production. This means WellBeam data is available in FHIR format for any of our partners to consume. So our healthcare systems, our customers, as well as any other third-party vendors with whom we deliver our service, are able to send us data as well. We are able to send it back to them, and using AWS tools, SageMaker, and other analytic tools, we're able to analyze this patient data to help suggest to our providers actionable courses they can take for their patients. At the end of the day, remember, John, that we want the patient to get better sooner. Being able to run such kinds of queries on this data can help them get to recovery much faster.
Pascal, were you able to do this before the FHIR setup, and did it take longer to do it, or were you not able to do it because you weren't integrated or able to utilize FHIR?
We were able to do some of it in a somewhat painful manner. But now that we have this data in FHIR format, and this is what the healthcare industry has embraced, and there's a lot of models within AWS to be able to run quote unquote intel on this data. It's basically being able to leverage what other people have done and where the industry is today. It makes our job much easier than it was before.
Okay, so without FHIR, how much time would it take you to handle this communication with a customer or healthcare provider?
This would take, there's different complexities to it. I could attach a time, but I could explain what it looks like. So there's the contractual process where you have to convince your customer that you're able to share data with them or get data with them through other protocols that, as I mentioned before, are a bit outdated and takes a lot of time to get set up through their IT teams. With FHIR, this is a more modern architecture. It is REST based. It is JSON objects. This is what the internet thrives on today. So it's much easier to get off the ground. And if you share this with a health system leadership, they know it's not going to take as long as other previous projects have taken. So contracting is reduced, and when it gets to IT, and they also hear the type of infrastructure you have in place, it makes them be at ease in okaying your project. So it's helped reduce the time from, let's say, a couple months, 6+ to maybe 2 to 3 months. And we hope to get it shorter as we explore further what FHIR capability can offer us.
Nice. Pascal, it seems like your progress and the partnership with IBEX Labs and AWS has really kind of elevated your company to help customers more and patients more get better in the long run. That's your whole entire goal. You said that you came from Kenya and now you wanted to be a doctor, but you went and been a developer for GoFundMe, and now you're back to healthcare. I think it comes full circle. Is that your passion to continuously help people?
Yes, that's been my passion since childhood. I think aside from it being my passion, just seeing my mom got diagnosed with cancer about 5 years ago, and just
Oh,
seeing
sorry.
how the whole, thank you, seeing how the whole healthcare industry operated, I was able to see a lot of gaps. especially within the post-acute industry, where someone who has gone through surgery, radiotherapy, chemotherapy, and so on goes back home and still needs a lot of care, still needs to get their doctor's attention. Yet it's not easy to do that with today's processes. That's still core to my drive to trying to make healthcare better.
Pascal, you built a solution for a problem that you experienced firsthand. That is true passion. That is true trying to figure out the best outcome that others are having the same issue. So, Pascal, I want to thank you for joining me. This has been very informative to understand WellBeam, the integration and the collaboration with IBEX Labs, and the partnership with AWS. I'll tell you what, I didn't know so much about healthcare until I started talking to you about FHIR, AWS Health Lake, and understanding the transfer, the data that needs to happen between in order to expedite and cut this process down to 50% communication.
Yes, John, it is huge space. Healthcare IT really spans multiple domains. And for us, we're still learning as well. That's why we find it helpful to engage with partners who've really done this over and over and understand it much deeper than we do.
Nice. Pascal, I want to thank you for joining me.
Thank you, John, for hosting me as well.
This has been awesome. Everybody, Pascal Odek, CTO and co-founder of WellBeam. Today's topic was healthcare interoperability, B2B SaaS application with FHIR Data Lake. My name's Jon Myer. Thanks for watching the Jon Myer Podcast. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, and notify, because guess what? We're out of here.